Welcome back to part two. My name is Matt Hay. I'm Director of Consulting at CACI, and we're going to talk about some more the integrated customer experience and how you deliver it through multiple channels. In the first part, just as a quick recap, we talked about our views on why organisations are struggling to progress in this space and what some of the key challenges that they face are. I think where we got to with that in part one was a point where we were saying, so where should you start in terms of integrating your customer experience? And I think the key messages there were around think big but start small as being the right way to go for lots of organisations. So in this part we're going to cover off the first four habits that these sorts of organisations exhibit. Those habits are having a common channel strategy, having a customer experience strategy, having board level support, and being able to demonstrate and measure the value that the customer experience is delivering for them. So what we're finding increasingly is that roles are being created within organisations that have customer experience in the title, whether that's a head of customer experience or a director of customer experience. But that just reflects the fact that more and more organisations are starting to wake up to the reality that there is a challenge that they have to address here somehow. So the key questions are starting to change. It's not, should we do this, and really, do we have to? It's more a case of the organisations have realised that it's a competitive disadvantage not to be able to do this. It's changed from being a competitive advantage. So those sorts of questions now are starting to turn around to be, where should we start, where's the biggest value, and how do we actually start making these sorts of things happen? Off the back of the e-consultancy report that we commissioned, that we talked about in part one of this, we did a lot of research. I think there were over 900 organisations that responded. What we did subsequently to the publishing of the report was we analysed a lot of those responses. Out of this analysis, we think we've identified 7 what we call habits that organisations that have succeeded in moving forward with the integration of the customer experience seem to exhibit. During this part of the presentation, what we're going to focus on is the first 4 of those habits that we've identified and just walk you through those and explain them in a bit more detail. So if we start with number 1, which is around having a holistic channel strategy. So the first habit, the right answer will differ by organisation. What we don't believe is that a simplistic approach of you have to be able to do everything through every channel in order to integrate the customer experience is necessarily true. I think it's too simple an answer. To get to the right answer there, we think there are 3 basic questions that an organisation needs to ask itself around what each of its channels needs to be able to do. And the first one of those is actually, what does the customer use each of your channels for? Is it just for research, or is it purchasing, or is it customer service? The second is, are the channels equipped to facilitate this purpose? Once you've established what you need each of your channels to be able to do, then the third question is, okay, so how integrated across those channels do I really need to be? And we think there are 4 factors in that decision. One is predictability, so actually, how good are you at being able to anticipate what the customer is going to want through that channel? So if we want to personalise the experience in the channel, how confident are we can do that accurately? Consistency is the second one. So actually, how important is it to the customer that when they go to a different channel, that the information that they receive is the same? Is that something that's important to them? The third dimension is controllability, and this is really an internal factor. And the question you need to ask yourself is, how much scope can I give an individual channel to make its own decisions about what it's going to do? How constrained does it need to be to stop it undermining the broader customer experience? And the fourth one is agility. So how rapidly are customers' needs likely to change, and that directly influences how quickly you need to move data across channels in order to truly integrate them. So whatever answers you come up with to those questions for your organisation, that will determine the complexity and potentially the cost of the data and technical integration that's required. And conversely, it would mean that you would need to find sufficient benefit to the organisation in order to justify delivering that level of integration. The second habit exhibited by these organisations, as well as having a channel strategy, is, as you might expect, actually having some kind of customer experience strategy. So being clear about what they want an integrated customer experience to deliver. The interesting thing here from my perspective is being somebody who spends a lot of their time talking about strategies, is the key here is often to keep things simple. What we found works well in this area is to actually have a strategy that's not too prescriptive. What it needs to be able to do is be directional, so that all the necessary stakeholders can understand easily what you're trying to achieve and can agree with the direction that it's heading in. The final point on the strategy, though, that these organisations have in common is you need to be truthful with yourself and honest about actually what your ambitions are, but also what the current status is today. If anybody can do a blue sky strategy, but it actually has to be tied into reality, and it has to feel real to the stakeholders, that it is achievable and deliverable in a timescale that makes sense to them. The third habit of getting executive level support for integrated customer experience is no different to any other kind of cross-functional project that you would try to do in a business. You would expect that this would need to get board level support, and it absolutely does. It needs a champion at that sort of level to drive things through. As with any project of this nature, the key to that is normally to make it really clear what the benefit is for the business, and for that to be compelling. And it has to be compelling enough to be a foundation stone for the ongoing development of the business. It can't be a fashionable, trendy thing that people are talking about for 6 months, and then the next shiny thing comes along and everybody jumps behind that. You've got to find a way to embed it into the future plans for the business. An example of that is organisations that tend to have 3 or 5 year plans. In those sorts of situations, it's imperative that you've got executive level support to an integrated customer experience being part of those plans and that vision. An integrated customer experience will deliver benefits, but in most organisations it's not a 6-month thing. It takes longer than that. Again, as part of managing the expectations of the board, it's around them understanding that this is a longer term commitment from them. It's not something that they can focus on for 6 months and then it'll all be fine. The fourth and last habit that we're going to talk about today is around how these organisations that are succeeding with an integrated customer experience are actually able to demonstrate the value that it delivers. It's actually about being able to measure value in the most appropriate way. So that's what this picture's showing. It's not showing that a call centre is less important. It's showing actually that measuring an integrated customer experience means measuring things that are different to in the past. And things that traditionally organisations have found quite hard to measure. So that's why customer retention / loyalty, so social media sentiment, even profitability is often very, very hard for organisations to measure. But they are the sorts of things that you need to have in place in order to show the impact that having an integrated customer experience is having. As ever, being able to measure something effectively means that you need to have the data in place. That's what these organisations are good at. They actually have the data that they need in a format that they need in the right environment, that they are able to measure these things going forward. I know we've used the phrase big data in there, but this is not necessarily a big data question. It's just having the right data. Looking back across the four, they all appear quite logical. As ever with these sorts of projects, as we said in the first part, this is not a new challenge, and that's why we started talking about Think Big, Start Small.
You've been listening to Matt Hay from CACI. Thank you for watching part 2. Join us again for part 3 when we continue to look at the 7 keys to a highly integrated customer experience.